Good afternoon, and welcome to today's webinar, the 2025 Retirement Confidence Survey, the focus on Black Americans. Today's speakers will be me, the Director of Wealth Benefits Research at eBree, and Lisa Greenwald, the CEO of Greenwald Research, the two that have worked on the survey from our respective organizations. Rich is unable to join us today, but Lisa and I thought this was very important to present these ideas, so we're going to go through the results today, and I hope you can find some useful information from this. But before we begin, I would like to do a little housekeeping mention. We will have a Q&A session at the end. To enable a Q&A session, there is a chat at the bottom. You'll see that when you go to the bottom, you'll hit the chat button. The panel will pop up on the right. You can put in your question. We'll be able to answer your questions as we get to that section. If you do not find the chat on the bottom, because some companies disable it, you can send us questions at info@ebree.org, and we will get the questions that way. So we'll still have an opportunity to get the questions to us, even if you can't use the chat function. So with that, I would like to begin today's survey. We are talking about the Retirement Confidence Survey. This is the 35th annual version of the survey, dating all the way back to 1990. eBree and Greenwald have been working on it since then. This year, we had a sample size of about a little over 2,700, split between workers and retirees, with an additional 700 people that were non-Hispanic, Black, or African Americans. So what we were able to then provide us statistically significant results. We did various breaks of the population for Black Americans and Black retirees. This survey was conducted back in January through the first week of February, and all respondents were 25 and older. We would like to thank our sponsors for this year. You can see them all listed there. Again, we'll be starting off the 2026 survey very soon. So I hope you're interested, find these results interested, and consider us for next year. And again, thank you to these organizations for providing funding for this year's survey. So our first topic we want to look at is the background. And in particular, we see a wealth gap, and we have some differences in attitudes towards savings and retirement between Black Americans and non-Black Americans. So the first thing we see is some basic demographic differences. We see that Black Americans are a little bit younger in general. They're more likely to have lower incomes, and they're more likely to not be married. So those are some of the differences that really stand out for the Black Americans versus the rest of the population. There isn't a difference in the survey between those employed and unemployed and retired. It's more of just the income, age, and marital status that is different in these populations. So that brings us to the first financial difference that we see between Black Americans and non-Black Americans, and in particular, those in the two upper income groups here that we have, the 35 to 74,000 and 75 plus. Black Americans were more likely to consider debt to be a major or minor problem than non-Black Americans. You can see it's a little bit more at the 35 to 74, but once you get to 75 plus, it's a pretty substantial amount of being difference. It's almost 18 percentage points difference for Black Americans, considering that they consider debt to be a major or minor problem. Then this goes to really the next slide, which really feeds into this, that the higher percentage of Black Americans and those two income groups thinks that debt is a problem. Therefore, it follows that debt is negatively impacting their ability to save or to live in retirement. Again, the same two income groups had a difference. There isn't a difference for the less than 35,000, but for the two income groups where we saw the debt was more of a problem for Black Americans, it's also then more likely to have an impact on their ability to save for or live in retirement. Next, we go to some of the first attitudinal questions. And the one that is, we asked if retirement was not a priority. And we could see that the percentage that agree is the same between each of the groups, between the Black and non-Black Americans in each income group. But we do see that not being a priority is less likely to occur for those with the highest incomes, regardless of whether they're black or non-black. So again, that's a similarity, is that there isn't really a difference in retirement being retirement savings being a priority. Therefore, that isn't really something that stands out. It's more of an income issue than a black or non-black issue. The second one is whether they have saved for retirement. Here we do see a difference. Non-Black Americans are more likely to say that they have saved for retirement in the two upper income groups. We don't see that for low income Americans, but we do see that once we get to the middle and upper income groups, that non-Black Americans are more likely to have saved for retirement than Black Americans. And all this comes together to show that there is a difference overall in their wealth on the next slide, where we can see that even when we control for income, non-Black Americans are more likely to have that top dark green, where they have more than $250,000 in assets or savings and investments. This is not including homes. This is just savings outside of homes. So this is really the difference. You really see that there's that less likely to save, less likely to have higher incomes. Even when they're less likely to have been able to build income and be able to build assets and be able to then have generational wealth that can be passed down. They're not as likely to be able to have that starting point that non-Black Americans have had in the past. So that kind of gives you an idea of kind of the attitudes and wealth that we see. What we want to go into is look at workplace plans. Because on the next slide, we see the primary sources that Americans either have in retirement or expect to have is Social Security, or a workplace retirement savings plan, or savings on their own. I'm going to focus on the factors that we see of interest from from workplace retirement savings plans. And then in the next section, Lisa will start looking at individual planning for retirement through individual savings. So I want to go through some more questions on what we see from workplace savings plans. The first one we see is that of participation. And we can see that there really isn't a difference in participation when you control for income between Black and non-Blacks for those that say they participate when they offer. The light blue bar is the percentage that say they participate when they're offered, contributing money. The darker blue bar is the percentage that were offered a plan. And unsurprisingly, the offer goes up with income, and participation also goes up with income when offered. But you don't see the individuals reporting differences between those that are Black and those that are non-Black for these workers in their participation and offer rates. They are the same. So on the next slide, we see the importance of various features about workplace savings plans and the satisfaction that they have with their workplace savings plan. So these individuals have to be offered a workplace plan. So the workers who are offered a workplace retirement plan. We can see that the overall satisfaction, just in general, the satisfaction with the plan is almost 90% for both Black and non-Black workers that are offered a retirement plan. And then we look at these other various features that are either almost 85% or down to maybe 75% that are satisfied with these features, whether it's the fund or investment options available, the tools and resources available to determine how much to save, the tools and resources available to help determine the stream of income, or the fees associated. And fees is the lowest likely for them, but it's still pretty high at 75%. But I want you to keep an eye on the fund and investment satisfaction, where it's almost 85%. Because within on the next slide that we ask for, what are the most valuable improvements? And what we could see for both Black and non-Black is that Americans is that they would like to have more fund or investment options. While they are satisfied with what they have, they would still like to have more choice. And in particular, when you ask for those choices, we see that the things that come up, particularly the next two for the Black Americans, are more investment options designed for after retirement, or insurance options that provide guaranteed income after you retire. While those aren't the next two for the non-Black Americans, they still are in the top five, and you can see them at 4 and 5 for non-Black Americans. But Black Americans in particular are more likely to say that they're looking for investment options designed for after retirement, and that there is that interest or maybe potential need for figuring out how to turn assets into income at retirement. But also we also see that workers that are offered plans think they need better explanations for how much income these savings can produce and whether they're on track. Those are also too big to get into the top five. There's assorted other ones that you could see in our study that don't make the top five, but these came out for both Black and non-Black Americans. A little bit difference in the order, but those five were the importance of more choices, particularly choices for after they retire or generating income, and really finding out what they need to have saved for when you get to retirement. So the next slide, then we ask about potentially retirement income strategies, or how we can change their savings into retirement income. The first one is to have a default investment option within the plan. Basically, there's some annuity product either built into a TDF or something else that allows them to purchase the annuity within the product. The second one is that it's basically an out of option, where you have a platform where you can buy your annuity outside of the plan, that you want to provide some level of guaranteed income outside of the plan. And the last strategy is providing some withdrawal strategy. It's not necessarily a guaranteed product, but it does provide you some stream of income that they know what they're doing. All of these were pretty much same level of attractive. Black Americans were more likely to find each of these more attractive, but in general, all of these systems were attractive or appealing to figure out, because this is one of the big issues, is how do we change that savings into income? And all of these ways that people are looking at, really thinking about, sounding an appealing way to do it, and really finding out how these products can be provided, and really making individuals understand what is best and not best for them to understand, will be helpful for them in generating income. Next, we look at potential leakage, and that would be whether individuals took a loan or a withdrawal from their retirement savings. So this is any individuals that have saved for retirement. So the first two the black and gray bars are the percentage that have taken a loan or withdrawal from the workplace retirement savings plan. You do see that Black Americans were more likely to have said that they've taken a loan or withdrawal from their retirement savings plan. And then when you get to the three groups there on the blue, this is the type that they've taken when they've taken a loan or withdrawal. What we see is that Black Americans were more likely to have taken a hardship distribution, whereas the other two were equally likely between Black and non-Black participants in a workplace retirement savings plan. But that's really the one difference, is the hardship withdrawal. And I think we could see why when we look at the next slide, when we look for the top 4 reasons why they have taken a loan or withdrawal. And we could see that Black Americans cited the number one reason was that they needed to cover day-to-day expenses, make ends meet. They really needed that money to be able to do that. So they're more likely to take a hardship withdrawal because they needed that money just to cover day-to-day expenses. Where non-Black Americans were saying that they needed to, or were using it to buy a home or car or other large purpose. But we do see some commonality, and the second reason for why a loan or withdrawal was taken is that both Black and non-Black retirement plan participants said that they needed to pay off a credit card bill or credit card debt. So we do see that those are some of the same to do that. And you do see that even though it's not the top reason for Black Americans to purchase a car or loan, does come in third place among Black Americans. So when you do look at these top 3 expenses, you do see the same. 3 to 4 are the same. You do see one difference between the two. To do that, you have covered medical expenses for non-Black Americans, and is being the difference between that. And so for that, gives us the idea of what happens in workplace savings plans. So now I want to hand it off to Lisa, who's going to talk about individual retirement planning issues.
Thank you, Craig, and good afternoon, everyone. So as you saw, the number 3 actual or expected source of income in retirement is personal savings and investments. That's happening outside of the plan, outside of the workplace. So I'm going to share with you some slides that help us see what that looks like. On the next slide, this first one, we have agreement, or in this case, disagreement, with the statement that financial services companies understand how to help me, my household. And you can see the majority of the bars here are hovering around a quarter, 25%, both Black and non-Black in each of these income categories. So we've got about a quarter of Americans suggesting financial services companies do not know how to help them. Now, the group that's standing out here that's especially likely to feel that financial services companies don't know how to help them is our non-Black respondents with less than $35,000 of income, right? Where it's over a third suggesting that financial companies don't know how to help them. You can, however, flip this to a positive. The positive would be that about 2/3 to 3/4 of Americans, both Black and non-Black, think that financial services companies can help them. So on the next slide, we're going to look at where information and advice is coming from for financial and retirement planning. 2 of the top 3 sources cited by both Black and non-Black respondents are non-professionals, right? Our first bar here, family and friends, there's no significant difference there between our Black and non-Black respondents. And our third set of bars there, doing research on your own and doing things online on your own, right? 2 of the top 3 non-professional sources. Number 3 is a financial professional or a financial advisor. And there is no difference significantly in the data between our Black and our non-Black respondents in citing that a personal financial professional is a source of information. Down the chart, there are a couple other little interesting differences that we noticed. So our Black respondents were more likely at 20%. To say that a retirement plan representative would be a source of information for them. And at 12%, much farther down the line, we see that our Black respondents were more likely to cite ChatGPT or AI tools as a source of financial or retirement planning information for them. But next, I want to focus on the financial professional. That's on the next slide. Financial advisor use increases with income, right? Within each income category, we don't see statistically significant differences between Black and non-Black respondents, but we see major differences by income and by income category. On the next slide, I wanted to take a look at some of the products, plans, and processes that financial professionals often get involved in when helping consumers with their personal savings and investments. And here, I think there are some really interesting and important differences. Our Black respondents were less likely to say they had a will or an estate plan, a medical directive or power of attorney, a formal financial plan, a 529 plan, and an HSA. However, they were far more likely than their non-Black counterparts to say they had insurance. Life insurance, they were more likely to say they had, disability insurance, and long-term care insurance. And way down there at the bottom, we see equal claiming of annuity ownership between Black and non-Black respondents. The other interesting thing, I think, in the world of individual planning was what our respondents said they wanted to work with a financial professional or advisor on. That's on the next slide. And I think there were some interesting differences here. Our Black respondents were more likely to say that the help they wanted from a financial professional was help reducing debt. And they were more likely than non-Black respondents to say they wanted help with their life insurance needs and creating a will and an estate plan. They were less likely, only in one category than our non-Black respondents. They're not as interested in working with an advisor on figuring out if they are saving enough or have saved enough. However, it's still one of our biggest bars here, right? It's still something that all of our respondents want help with from a financial professional, but our Black respondents were less likely to say they wanted help in that particular area. So if you take all the things Craig just shared with you, plus some of this, the real question, of course, in the retirement confidence survey is, well, what does that mean for confidence? And I'm going to share that, our overall retirement confidence, as well as some slides that sort of hint at what retirement is like for our retirees, both our Black and our non-Black retirees. All right, so on the next slide, overall confidence. Our Black respondents in the lower two income categories are more likely to be very or somewhat confident that they'll have enough money to live comfortably throughout retirement. In the upper income group at 75K plus, these numbers are equal. So I wanted to look at what retirement looks like for these different respondents, different race and different income groups. On the next slide, we see a few differences in how retirement has played out for retirees. So our Black retirees are significantly more likely to say that they retired earlier than planned, right? And I think we all know the implications of that for our finances and retirement. Black retiree is more likely to retire earlier than planned. And the reasons, much like some of the things Craig was showing you, it's sort of the same top reasons, but in a different order for our Black respondents versus our non-Black respondents, right? Importantly, even though it's 44%, our Black respondents were more likely than our non-Black respondents to say that they retired early due to a health problem or disability. And they were more likely than non-Black respondents to say they were offered an early retirement package or they were incentivized to take an early retirement. Our non-Black respondents at over half, say they retired early because they could afford to. And the share saying that they retired early due to a health problem or disability is notably lower there at the bottom bar at 32%. So that has a lot of implications for what retirement ends up looking like for people. So we took a look at a couple attitudinal statements among our retirees, how things are going in retirement. So first up on the next slide is spending. So here what you're seeing is agreement with the statement that I'm able to spend money as I want within reason. And these are our retirees, right? And what we see is within these income categories, right, our Black respondents and our non-Black respondents are equally likely to agree, at least, in the lower two income groups, they are equally likely to agree that they are spending money how they want and need to within reason. But there is a very big difference between our Black respondents and our non-Black respondents in that upper income category, right? 91% of our non-Black retirees in that income category say, yes, I'm spending how I want, compared to 69% of our Black retirees with 75K or more, right? That's a pretty big difference there. So all in all, I was wondering, is retirement going as expected? The next slide um, shows agreement with the statement that I am having the retirement lifestyle I envisioned, right? This is among retirees. I'm having the retirement I envisioned. And here we start to see some more concerning differences between our Black respondents and our non-Black respondents. While it is not a statistically significant difference here in the middle for our 35K to 74K cohort, you can certainly see that there's a directional difference. So in nearly every income category, our Black retirees are less likely to agree that they are having the retirement lifestyle they envisioned. So it seems many of the issues Craig shared and that came up in our data early on in this deck, debt, savings, retiring early, eventually seem to be catching up with some of our Black retirees based on what we see here. And really interestingly, that higher confidence among lower income Black workers in particular may not be a reality if we base it on what Black retirees are saying to us here. And that is the conclusion of our data presentation. Craig, you want to take it away for Q&A? We're looking in the chat for that. Any comments or questions, we're happy to answer.
Yeah, please use thank you, Lisa, and please use the chat function to ask any questions. First of all, I just want to start off with, is there anything additionally interesting or takeaways that we want to take away from this survey? I think one of the things I have, and I'll give Lisa a chance here to think about this some more, was that we really saw a difference in that 75 plus in savings and investments, those with 75 plus, difference between savings and investments between Black and non-Black Americans. And I think this goes with two other questions we asked about whether they, whether we asked whether they were more likely to say that their family struggled with money, or if they were more likely or less likely to be taught about savings and investments. While there wasn't a difference between Black and non-Black Americans either saying that their family struggled with money when they were children or the likelihood of being taught about savings and investments, there was something at the 75 plus group, and the Black Americans were less likely to do that. So they may not be starting out at the same place that those that were that the non-Black Americans were. They may have had the advantage of starting with more wealth to begin with and being around those investments and what they do, which kind of goes with the question we had. Also, we have there is that 75 plus group. And it does seem like that 75 plus group does have a little bit more people skewed up to that upper level of income than they do for non-Black Americans seem to have even higher incomes above the 75 than non-Black. But also that difference in where you're starting from also seems to be making a difference. It is something else that's important that you should be thinking about. Did you want to add anything else about interesting findings, Lisa?
No, but we got a couple things popping up in the chat. Someone asked if the 75K plus, just that cohort, the distribution of income looks different for Black than non-Black. Don't have those numbers readily available at my fingertips, but my guess is yes. 75K plus is a pretty big category for a household income. And the distribution of income for Black 75K plus and non-Black 75K plus probably skews upward for non-Black.
One of the interesting things, one of the questions come up is that it doesn't seem like that people are hesitant to spend down in the process. Well, I wouldn't say they're interested in providing incomes. In the past, we have asked questions on whether they are likely to spend down or whether they are likely to preserve assets. And we do see a distinction, not a distinction, but a grouping that does want to do each. There are a significant group of people that don't want to spend down. But I think that also goes to they don't know how to create income too. And I think that's what shows that people really don't know what they can do for create income, but they know they want to be able to provide some assets to hold on there. And so that's something that still is out there to providing income, as opposed to preserving assets, which may be just a default because they don't know how to turn it into income.
Right, Craig, it reminds me of a question that was in RCS for many years. We used to ask our retirees sort of their overall goal for their assets. And year after year after year, we would hear retirees overwhelmingly say their goal is to preserve or grow, right? There was an option for spend down. I want to argue, I don't, 1 in 10 maybe retirees would say that's their target is to spend down.
Another question came in here about whether their term in quotes, the black tax, were successful, Black Americans are expected to pay for their other support for their other family members. We do see that there is an expectation, higher likelihood of expectation of getting money from family support for Black Americans than there is for non-Black Americans. So there is that perception or expectation that they will get money and that will have to be provided. So we do see some of that from this survey. So yes, there is some of that still there, and that may be according, but also it doesn't look like they're not starting at the same place either. So, and that may be because their parents are helping generations as well too, and that seems to build upon each other and doesn't allow that generational wealth to go on. Did you want to talk about this one about even though people aren't spending down, they still seem to be satisfied with their lifestyle in retirement in most cases, Lisa?
Yeah, retirees are really adaptable. Um, and we tend to see in the RCS retiree confidence that their money is going to continue to last throughout retirement is very high. Large shares say they're having the retirement lifestyle they envision. Large shares suggest their overall expenses and expenses in specific categories are coming in as they expected. And so it's an area where I know there's additional research being done and should be done as to what are retirees actually sacrificing anything. And if so, what are they sacrificing? The RCS doesn't capture all of that detail, but we know that retirees are adapting to their means, right? And then telling us, no, this is what I expected. Things are going as I expected.
But another question about whether we stratified for age, and we looked at it, but we didn't provide a lot of results because we didn't see a lot of difference between age. But the one that did stand out was whether the individuals thought that they were likely to find someone or work with someone, a financial advisor that felt their needs. And the older individuals, Black individuals, were less likely to feel that they could find someone that would be able to help or understand their needs. Whereas once they got to the younger two generations, X and millennials, there weren't any differences. So that was like the one big issue that stood out for age. We did not focus more on age because we really didn't see any particularly large differences by age that stood out when we were going through the results. One other thing I did want to ask about or point out was Lisa showed that Black Americans were more likely to retire earlier than they expected. We also asked a question then about expected retirement ages and actual retirement ages. What's interesting is there isn't a difference between the expected retirement ages, but there was a difference between the actual retirement ages. And non-Black Americans were more likely to retire after 65, whereas Black Americans were more likely to retire at 65 or younger. So you do kind of see that age difference did come out in when retirees actually did it. And it seemed to be the difference was at 65 or younger versus over 65, where the difference really stood out between Black and whites as far as where their retirement. But their expectations were pretty much the same on when they retire, even though they were likely to end up retiring a little bit earlier. And it looked like it really did, as someone pointed out in the questions, is health is a big factor. Health and wealth really go together here, an important point. Uh, there was one other question that I saw
Yeah,
here that I wanted you
Craig,
to
I'm
talk
seeing
about.
actually a couple questions, comments around debt. So what RCS asks is for self-reported, right? The question you saw here, is debt a major, minor, or not a problem for your household? Um, in years past, we have asked the type of debt, but I don't believe we did in 2025. What we do know from another survey that Greenwald and Ebrey run together, the workplace wellness survey. Now, granted, this is just workers, but the largest driver of debt is credit card debt. It is credit card debt, and someone asked if it's student loans. No, student loans fall to the bottom of that list. It impacts a few a lot, but credit card debt impacts a lot of people a lot. So usually that debt that people are managing is credit card debt.
I think this other question, I think, talk about this from the general survey, is there seems to be little on inflation, but I know that came out in the general survey. Did you want to talk about that, Lisa? Right while you're drinking.
Sorry, sore throat. My apologies. Yes, I mean the RCS has several questions about broader socioeconomic concerns. Inflation is one of them. Americans were overall a majority concerned about inflation, concerned about inflation's impact on their spending. Um, what we were calling out here is areas where we saw interesting, statistically significant differences between non-Black and Black respondents. And I don't believe there was a significant difference in inflation concerns and impact on spending by Black and non-Black, which is why you're not seeing it here. But it's in the 2025 short report, sort of for all Americans, workers, and retirees.
Right, right. And it was one of the top concerns. And the other was another top concerns was government changing government programs. When you looked at the two top concerns about the retirement was both inflation and possible changes to government programs. And in particular, what they were talking about was Social Security. So but that came out, that was across all race groups, race ethnicity groups. So that's a very important finding, but it wasn't any different because there's many of these things, the challenges for retirement that all individuals are facing. And that's kind of where our first survey came out. Those are really universal truths that we saw that. Here we really wanted to point out the differences and really that difference with they're struggling with the debt. In a lot of cases, it's what someone has pointed out, the college debt. When you look at those with college, with student loan debt, Black Americans are more likely to have it, and their average balance when they do have it is higher than non-Black Americans, which really sets them off along with the credit card debt that Lisa was talking about to get them on that path that's a little bit harder to be able to build wealth because they're still paying down debt. Someone asked if we're able to, follow these people and find out if they're working their place out of debt. We don't. This is a one-time shot, and we just ask what their current financial situation, not what it has been in the past. Someone also asked about advisor use. We just ask about general advisor use. We don't get into whether it's self-directed or whether it's a particular advisor, or whether we break those out on those decisions.
It reminds me of the question about age, right? These things are all very correlated, right? In all the years Craig and I have been working on RCS, right? The thing that has the greatest influence on how people answer the RCS questions is their financial means, right? So you can look at household income, you can look at investable assets, whichever flavor of financial means you feel like looking at. But when you hold that financial means constant, you start to see more similarities than differences. So age, for example, is highly correlated with income. Older people have higher incomes than younger people by and large, right? Advisor use is also going to look, the trend is also going to look like those with higher income, because those with higher income use advisors more. So those with advisors end up looking just like those with advisors. However, to the advisor point on that one slide I showed about financial plan process, product ownership, I did look at it by advisor use. All of those things are higher when the individual is working with a financial advisor.
I think we've answered all the questions. Is there anything you want to say, Lisa, before I do some more promoting of what next year's survey is going to be about?
No, I'm excited for next year. Let's talk about next year.
Yeah. Can we go back to the slide? Yes, the 2026 survey is kicking off soon. Actually, we start next month. This year, instead of focusing on a particular demographic group, we're going to focus on unpaid family caregivers. We did this about 3 years ago. We know this is a big aspect as more and more people are caught in that so-called sandwich generation where they have to take care of kids and their parents. So we really want to find out what these caregivers and how it's affecting their retirement and their ability to, and really it's a growing percentage of what's going on. If you participate, do the survey, you can help develop the survey. You can take part in our readout sessions. You can get access to all the raw data and many, many more results than you can see from either our webinars or reports. We do have 2 reports on our website. One, the general survey that Lisa and I referred to, and then the survey that focused on the Black Americans. Both of those are available on our website here at eBree retirement/retirementconference.survey. If you have any more questions about participating in 26 survey, please email me or Lisa. Our email addresses are there. Again, there's a great deal of information we can find out. We do take different questions and different things about what's going on. So being part of that helps you really understand and get a better idea and be a part of what that survey questionnaire design will be for next year. So please consider us for 2026. And also I want to go through some events eBree has coming up on September 30th. Next week, we have a webinar on ICRAs for those of you interested in employment-based health benefits and how an ICRA could work. And then we have our Health Benefits Symposium that we're doing with SHRM on October 22nd. And then we have our Financial Wellbeing Symposium on December 11th. Any of the information, please go to info@ebree.org. Greenwald Research is celebrating their 40th anniversary this year, and they're having a big celebration. In particular, on November 4th and 5th, they're hosting a cocktail party and a symposium, and really have some really interesting panels set up for the symposium. You go for more information, go to that website to see it, because that'll be a really good event as Greenwald celebrates their 40th anniversary. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. If you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to send me an email. I think I've got one already. Thank you and have a good day.
Have a good day, everyone. Thank you.